Good morning, Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington, here in the fellowship hall. Men's group just finished trimming roses, having our decaf, and solving all the world's problems. We meet at 8 o'clock because by 9, it's about 9:30 or so now, it's already so hot outside that it's getting uncomfortable, and by 10:30 it'll be in the mid-80s and it'll be up to 90 again all this week. Another hot week. This is when things grow, when things ripen, when we enjoy the fruits of the valley because of these temperatures. The lack of rain, of course, causes wildfires. Oh, Jerry just popped in and said that there's a sign on the church next door. They are meeting Sunday mornings at Harriet Thompson, even though they have a very, very large backyard with some beautiful shade, a nice flat spot they could have outdoor church. But apparently they're renting the school. So, well, we're hoping by mid-September, though, that we'll be back up and beginning to transition back into the building, because I'd like to be able to do education hour or education 40 minutes starting at 9 a.m. Sunday morning, and it'll probably start the second or third Sunday in September. But I'd like to be right here where I am right now in the fellowship hall. And those who would be seated around the room will join those who would be online. We can hook up the television so that everybody can see, and I would sit in the way so that you'd be able to see the group, and we'd be all one group. We're going to practice that, how to be one group in more than one location. Now, back to Genesis. I'm skipping over chapter 20 because Abraham is traveling with Sarah, and they cross another king, King Abimelech, and King Abimelech wants Sarah, and Abraham says, "This is my sister." It sounds a lot like what happened when they went down to Egypt, and Abraham says to Pharaoh, "This is my sister." Pharaoh finds out, "Oh, this is your wife, and God is about to punish me for what I'm doing." And that happens all over again. So it's this trust relationship between God and Abraham is not yet there. Remember, there's been a covenant ceremony, the cutting of the animals in half, and the pot of fire, and the pillar of fire, or the staff of fire, going between them and consuming them. So the burnt offering ceremony has not, in Abraham's mind, changed things. It has not led him to trust that all he has to do is tell the truth and that God will be with him. He still seems to think that lying and being deceitful is the best way. And all it does is cause more trouble. Not just for him and for his wife, but for everybody. So, chapter 21, we finally get to the point where Abraham and Sarah have a child. Chapter 21, verse 1, "The Lord dealt with Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham gave him the name Isaac to the son whom Sarah bore him. Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Now Sarah said, 'God has brought laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me.' And she said, 'Who would have ever said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age.' So Sarah at first laughed at God at the thought that she would be a mother in her old age. And now she's laughing because she is joyful. She has been barren for 90 years, and now we just can't even imagine. That's where the story stops making sense to us. She bears a child and nurses a child when she's 90. And we ask, how? And this is God's doing. Again, couldy, wouldy, diddy. Could God do this? Yes. Would God do that? In order to keep God's promise to Abraham? Yes. Did God? The historical record is that Abraham had a son, Isaac. And so, couldy, wouldy, diddy? Yes, yes, and yes. But now, Ishmael has got to be 11, 12, something like that. And Hagar, Sarah's maid, is the mother of Ishmael. And now Sarah is laughing at Hagar, who once laughed at Sarah. Verse 8. The child grew and he was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw that the son of Hagar, the Egyptian woman, whom she had borne to Abraham, playing with her son Isaac. So she said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not inherit along with my son Isaac." Wow, the jealousy. Here's the now 13-year-old boy playing with his younger brother. They're half-brothers. They're both sons of Abraham. And the fact that the older one is caring for the little brother, that's pretty cool. Isn't that what we want for siblings to do, to play together? And Sarah could look upon her stepson and say, wow, one happy family. But she doesn't. She remembers that she was once being punished by God and had to witness her maid providing a son for her husband. And that maid and the son have just stuck in her craw. Ever have something like that? You just can't get beyond it. It just eats at you and eats you. So she goes to Abraham and says, I want him gone. 11. The matter was very distressing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, do not be distressed because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be named for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning, took bread and a skin of water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, sent her away, and she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water of the skin was gone, she cast the child under one of the bushes. She went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about a distance of a bow shot, and said, do not be look on the death of the child. As she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy. The angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Come, lift the boy up and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make a great nation of him. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness. He became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran. His mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Well, there we have it, the story of Hagar, who believes her son is now going to die of thirst, as will she. And she goes a bow shot away. How far can an arrow travel? Well, I don't know, 100 yards or so. She doesn't want to see his suffering. She doesn't want to hold him and hear his last cry. Strange. We'd think a mother would want to be there even for that, no matter how painful. Strange times, strange people. But God knows that Ishmael is the result of God's doing. So God protects those whom God has brought into being. Ishmael is still Abraham's son, and of Ishmael, then an entire Arab race is born. It was 5 centuries after Jesus that the Islamic religion was born under Muhammad. And Muhammad taught that the Ishmaelites were the ancestors of the Arabs, of the Muslims. So Abraham and Ishmael are the patriarchs of Muslims, even as Abraham and Isaac are the patriarchs of Jews. They weave ancient stories into their own. We then continue, and Abimelech, who had wanted Abraham's wife back in chapter 20, which I skipped over, is now back in the story. About that time, Abimelech, with Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, "God is with you in all that you do. Now, therefore, swear to me here by God, you will not deal falsely with me or with my offspring or with my posterity. But as I have dealt loyally with you, you will deal with me and with the land where you have resided as an alien." Abraham said, "I swear it." So then they form a covenant. And then when there's conflicts, which we then get into, they work out the conflicts. And they called the place Beersheba, a place where they made the covenant. So now Abraham is making friends with people who are in the land of Canaan, people who he is not necessarily going to try to wipe out, people that they will have diplomatic relations with to live peaceably. Chapter 21 then, we have two women who can't stand each other. Each of them have their sons, and the women's sons are happy playing together as brothers. But one woman left and the other one remembered. And so now the other woman laughs and sends the one woman away, not caring if she and her son live or die. God has other plans. Both sons shall live. Both sons shall become the fathers of nations. And Abraham, he has the Rodney King philosophy. Why can't we all just get along? And he goes to this opposing king, Abimelech, and pretty much says that. And that's what they do. We look at our cities today and the rioting still going on, and we ask, what would it take for people to get along? No easy answers.